Roteiro ok, verbo ok, elenco ok, equipe de efeitos especiais ok. Finalmente, George Lucas dá início à produção propriamente dita de Star Wars. Em março de 1976, Lucas chega à Tunísia com seu elenco e a equipe de produção para dar início às filmagens de seu longa. Agora as coisas iriam melhorar, certo? Agora vai! Errado! As filmagens na Tunísia foram um desastre. As condições do clima impediram as filmagens já no primeiro dia.
We were going out there to shoot on the salt flat. I came out in the morning and the rain was going horizontally down the street this way. I thought, my God. I just called a rest day and the crew told them all to go back to bed because there was no way we were going to shoot on that.
It was the first 2 weeks of shooting. We'd run into a lot of weather problems. The sets had blown down. I didn't get everything shot. It was a disaster. At that point, I was pretty depressed, saying, boy, I've gotten myself in way over my head. I don't know what I'm going to do.
E após, as coisas não melhoraram. As condições do deserto tornaram o ambiente para as filmagens um verdadeiro inferno para a equipe. Gente, imagine enfrentar um sol do deserto com temperatura média de 40 graus, com as fantasias que vemos em Star Wars. Pois é, e foram horas de filmagens nessas condições.
I was the only stunt person on the picture in Tunisia. I became a Tuscan Raider or a sand person. I'm not a sun merchant. I don't like the sun, I just burn. So I just died with the heat of it. I couldn't stand it anymore, it was so hot. But there were so many problems, it just was not a good location.
Claro, não podemos esquecer do mau funcionamento de props, pane eletrônicos e outros percalços nos sets de filmagem. Seu único consolo era que logo que acabassem as cenas de Tatooine, as filmagens se mudariam para dentro do Elstree Studios, nos arredores de Londres, num ambiente muito mais favorável. Além de todas essas dificuldades, também não podemos dizer que aquele grupo de pessoas funcionava como um verdadeiro time. O elenco de protagonistas e o diretor eram americanos, mas a equipe de produção era britânica, e mais os britânicos que estavam para lá de céticos com o projeto em si. Para falar a verdade, olhavam para esse filme como se fosse uma verdadeira maluquice.
I'm not putting down the British crew, but there was kind of attitude like, what is this?
The British crew thought that we were all out of our minds. They just thought it was ludicrous and stupid.
And I can remember this lighting man. He said, what is all this about? He said, I can't, it's a load of rubbish, you know. And we all thought it the same at the time. Thought, yeah, this is a bit strange.
E ainda havia outra dificuldade existente na produção de Star Wars: a personalidade do diretor. George Lucas nunca foi o tipo extrovertido, aquelas personalidades magnéticas e carismáticas de se encher a sala. Ele não era do tipo que emanava autoridade no set.
I'm not sure exactly which journalist, but he came and visited the set, and after 3 days said, which one is the director? You know, George always seemed to be able to get somebody else to sort of speak on his, like a translator, from sort of the non-speak to the speak, which was kind of a little bit what his wife was.
He'd go, action. No one would hear him. He had to tap the first AD so the first AD would go, action! You know, because he was from the Royal Air Force or whatever. And also he'd go, cut. No one
so nobody can hear the cut.
Because there's squibs going off. We have stormtrooper helmets on. What do we know? So again, with the AD would go, cut! You know, really loud.
E seu jeito simples e introvertido temperou as filmagens com mais algumas dificuldades. Porque aquela equipe britânica de produção, já cética em relação ao projeto em si, olhava com reticências e até certo desdém para aquele jovem americano tímido, que se vestia diariamente com camisa, jeans e tênis, e que se apresentou para eles como diretor do filme.
George didn't really like being in London, I suppose, is the best way to say it. He doesn't like being away from home. He's not the most gregarious person in the world. He had some clashes with the cameraman. Gil Taylor was a very old-school cameraman. very crotchety. George, coming out of low-budget filmmaking, was used to doing a lot of things himself. So George would say things like, well, put a light here. And Gil took offense at that kind of thing. He says, that's not your job, son. You tell me what you want to see, and I'll do it the way I think is best to create what you want to see. It was a clash of style of working.
So it got to the point where our goal was just to cheer him up because he's really morose when he's filming. I think he's much more at home in the editing room. That's where he really comes to life because he's a film guy, student guy. He doesn't like being on the set.
E esse estilo calado se manteve até mesmo com seu próprio elenco. Porque Lucas tinha pouco ou nada a dizer para os atores sobre a direção que deveriam tomar em suas performances.
George never talked. It was sort of, we felt he wanted us to hit our marks and magically accommodate our dialogue.
We all had to fill in a lot of the blanks. It was more a matter of if we did something he didn't like, he'd tell us, rather than telling us what to do.
George's style of filmmaking was difficult. He never said anything. He never asked me to do a scene a particular way. He'd just say, action, cut. Terrific. Well, actually, he sometimes said terrific. Often he said nothing.
We do a take, like the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, squibs going off. He's headed for that small moon. Go turn to take a few minutes for navigation, calculate coordinates. Boom, boom, boom. And then they go cut, and you look over at George. You can't see me on radio, but you do this. You just shake his head. And then his direction was, let's do it again, but this time, do it better. That's Oscar-nominated direction right there. Do it better, guys.
Ai, desculpem, gente. Na verdade, Lucas sim passou orientações para o seu elenco. Mas, como os fãs gostam de lembrar, se resumem a duas. Mais rápido e mais intenso.
Faster and more intense was the only direction we ever got. And when he lost his voice, which took us days to find out that it actually occurred, we were going to get him a little board with a horn that said faster and more intense.
George is notorious for saying, after a take, do it again, faster, more intensity. He certainly said to me, it's terrific, Tony, can you do it again faster? But that's it, I didn't get more intensity. I don't think 3PO with more intensity would be bearable, do you?
Ainda havia problema específico no quesito direção do elenco por parte de Lucas. A questão do script. Porque os atores tinham problemas com os diálogos escritos naquele script e muita dificuldade em fazer suas falas parecerem críveis em cena.
It was tough dialogue to say. So I think I got, Governor Tarkin, I thought I recognized your foul stench, which, I don't know about you, but I'm always talking like that.
Governor Tarkin, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming to the last.
We used to say you can type this stuff, but you can't say it.
I did tell George one time that you could type this, but you couldn't say it. There were lines like, it'll take a few minutes for the Navicomputer to calculate the coordinates, which had to be said with great energy and verve.
Take a few minutes for the Navicomputer to calculate the coordinates.
A few minutes? Are you kidding? At the rate they're gaining?
What is it? You have to shoot this. Traveling through hyperspace is like dusting crops, kid. Without precise calculations, we fly too close to a store. They're bounce into a supermarket and then...
Yeah.
It'd be a hell of a mess.
What's that?
Watch. We're going to lose your deflector shields. Go strap yourselves in. Be careful on the way out.
Yeah, sure. I'm taking a bit of caution.
You... Go away!
Bounce too near a supermarket?
There's a line I remember from the original test, which is not in the film, where Han Solo says, hey, look, I've held up my side of the bargain, now I'm turning this ship around. I said, but we can't turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Sullust, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. And I thought, who talks like this?
Fear is their greatest defense. Here, I doubt if the actual security there is much greater than on Aquilai or Sullust, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault.
Who talks like this?
Mas George se mostrava inflexível.
I was doing it sort of flippant. because I couldn't see any other way to say this dialogue. And he took me aside, George. I think this was the longest chat we had at that juncture. And he said, she's really serious. You know, this is her planet that's in jeopardy, and she really doesn't like this. I mean, so I got it. Yeah, this was serious stuff.
I think George likes people. I think George is a warm-hearted person. But he's a little impatient with the process of acting, of finding something, you know? And he thinks it's there. It's right there. I wrote it down, you know? Just do that. You know, sometimes you can't just do that and make it work.
Para ilustrar o quanto todos estavam perdidos, a equipe lembra da entrada do grande vilão Darth Vader, que deveria ser triunfal. E foi, até David Prowse começar a falar.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
De ameaçador, Darth Vader passou a cômico. Quando a equipe viu a cena sendo gravada, ficou atônita.
I can still hear David Prowse's accent in the Darth Vader mask, muffled, because he would do the real dialogue. He's trying to curse Carrie Fisher or something.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
It was hilarious and terrifying at the same time, because we didn't know what Darth sounded like. That was the first time we heard him. We're like, is that it? Is it going to be some Scottish guy, or what is this?
Vamos dizer que Prowse não tinha exatamente o timbre de voz de um vilão de cinema. Mas, claro, George Lucas já tinha tudo em mente. A voz do ator seria substituída na edição.
The voice, of course, you don't provide. Do you find it frustrating as an actor not to be performing vocally?
Yes, terribly. I performed all the way through the picture. Because I have to learn all the dialogue, and the other actors in the film have to react to me and things like this.
But then they redub.
But then they redub. Yeah, I think the problem was, as you obviously realise, I have a West Country accent.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
very slight, very slight. And I don't think they could do Darth Vader with an English accent. That was the big problem.
Outro ator que passou pelo mesmo problema de Prowse foi Anthony Daniels, pois durante as filmagens a equipe também estranhou a voz com que aparentemente C-3PO soaria no longa.
We seem to be made to suffer. It's our loss in life.
It was mentioned a number of times that C-3PO might sound like a used car salesman, not the English butler type.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I must have fallen over.
Até mesmo os editores ficaram preocupados quando ouviram a voz do ator durante as filmagens.
C-3PO's voice struck us all as, well, we gotta do something about that.
E a ideia inicial seria fazer a mesma substituição da voz do ator por outra na edição. Mas não é apenas por causa do seu jeito de ser que Lucas agia assim durante a produção. O problema é que o diretor encontrou imensas dificuldades com a produção de seu filme. O trabalho da produção, em um contexto de orçamento limitado, mostrou não estar à altura do que Lucas esperava para trazer à vida este incrível universo que criara. Lucas via a cada cena, mesmo com todos os esforços da equipe, uma versão muito aquém do que visualizara em sua mente. E isso foi perturbando ainda mais o diretor. Por exemplo, Lucas teve que admitir que a épica cena em que os heróis enfrentariam o grande monstro místico em forma de Medusa, a Dianoga, jamais sairia do papel da forma como havia imaginado quando escreveu o roteiro. A equipe de produção tentou construir um monstro inflável para atender às demandas de Lucas, mas o resultado ficou longe do esperado. Com as condições daquele momento e o orçamento que tinham, Lucas teve que se contentar com um tentáculo e um olho saindo da água. A frustração de Lucas era flagrante. E para completar, Lucas viu o plano para a cena de uma cantina repleta de alienígenas e seres incríveis inspirados nas mitologias e histórias de ficção científica ruir diante de seus olhos. Além do orçamento, que já limitava muito a qualidade da produção, o especialista em maquiagem Stuart Freeborn adoeceu e teve de deixar a produção, deixando Lucas com as máscaras de alienígenas mal acabadas e monstros de quinta categoria. A cena original da cantina ficou tão chapolin que Lucas teve que refilmá-la em solo americano, com personagens adicionais, senão nunca teria ido para a telona.
What was disappointing would be the cantina sequence. It was really imaginatively described. And then you go in there and it looks like the Nutcracker Suite. You know, there's a frog guy and a mouse girl and a giant cricket at the bar. It was really disappointing. But, you know, George says, don't worry, we're going to fix all of this.
Pessoal, com todos esses problemas, o clima não ajudando o Lucas, a equipe de produção não ajudando o Lucas, o elenco não ajudando o Lucas e nem o próprio Lucas como diretor se ajudou. E o tempo foi passando e as coisas não andavam. As filmagens logo estariam atrasadas e a equipe britânica se recusou a trabalhar horas extras. Obviamente, nesse circo todo, não demorou para ultrapassarem o orçamento do filme. E claro, a Fox também começaria a cobrar resultados. A pressão sobre Lucas durante a produção era enorme. Lembrando, os executivos dos estúdios não acreditavam no jovem George Lucas. E um dos poucos defensores, se não o único, era Alan Platt Jr.
Well, there was a lot of problems, yes. I mean, every board meeting I attended, the subject was always about Star Wars. Well, the costs are rising, it's this, it's that. Look, we've read drafts of scripts that make no sense to us in any way, shape, or form, and it was rather unpleasant.
We were like 2 weeks over schedule. At that point, the board of directors at Fox started to panic and tell Alan Ladd Jr. that he had to shut that film down regardless. And so he came to me and said, look, you've got to finish in the next week because I got another board meeting and I can't go in there and say we're still shooting.
I kept going on the phone to their production department saying, this is insane. If we put on a second crew to do this, it costs us more than going an extra week. And they said, it doesn't matter. The studio's opinion is that the day deadline is more important than the money you spent.
Só para vocês terem uma ideia, a loucura que foi, nos últimos dias de filmagem, Lucas tinha 3 unidades filmando ao mesmo tempo no estúdio na Inglaterra. Lucas usava uma bicicleta para pedalar entre uma unidade e outra para tentar dirigir as cenas simultaneamente. E mais uma curiosidade, o tempo apertou tanto que no final do prazo nem todas as cenas realmente foram dirigidas por Lucas.
Well, I think George suffered a lot more than I was aware of at the time, but I was very focused on what I was doing because this was a very busy movie. It was just non-stop. George does. We did go over at the end and we split into 3 units right at the end, and Gary directed the 2nd unit and I had the distinction of directing the 3rd unit of Star Wars. My shots were things like close-up of R2-D2's 3rd foot going down. Nothing too dramatic, but that's how we finished it.
Foi uma correria, né, gente? A Fox havia originalmente marcado a estreia de Star Wars para o Natal de 1976, mas as dificuldades nas filmagens atrasaram completamente a agenda da produção. Com apenas 6 meses de prazo pela frente, não havia qualquer chance de entregar o projeto a tempo. Aos trancos e barrancos e com aquele chega disso da Fox, as filmagens de Star Wars finalmente se encerraram em julho de 1976. Mas acabou por aí? Não, nada disso. Ainda foram necessárias refilmagens, mas agora em solo americano. De qualquer forma, a jornada infernal de Lucas em solo estrangeiro havia acabado. Em janeiro de 77, as filmagens adicionais começaram a ser realizadas no Death Valley, na Califórnia. Então Lucas recebe mais uma notícia surpresa. Mark Hamill, seu protagonista, havia sofrido um grave acidente de carro. A notícia era que Mark Hamill havia destruído seu rosto na tragédia. E agora, como Lucas iria refilmar cenas envolvendo Luke Skywalker? Lucas teve que utilizar de um dublê para as refilmagens e ainda realizaria filmagens nas ruínas maias, no Parque Nacional de Tikal, na Guatemala, para cenas da base rebelde. E Alan Ladd Jr. conseguiria mais $20 mil da Fox para refilmar cenas da cantina com as novas criaturas. No primeiro semestre de 77, faltando alguns meses para a estreia, Lucas conseguia terminar a produção do seu filme. Mas calma lá, porque as dores de George Lucas não haviam terminado. Porque os desafios da pós-produção estavam prestes a começar. Pessoal, este é apenas um corte do nosso especial sobre Star Wars. O vídeo completo está aqui. É só clicar que você não vai se arrepender. Mas antes, deixe seu like neste vídeo e se inscreva no nosso canal. Até mais!